I want to do, as my clip,
Yeah.
1936.
Of course you do. Of course you do. Right, so when I said, let's do the Olympics, who, even if you're listening now, in the last 30 seconds, and when Mike said, I'm going to go first, who else knew he was going to go 1936? Anybody?
Because I find it fascinating. Absolutely fascinating. This is a clip from the 1936 Berlin Olympics.
Owens responded with an even longer leap, then sealed his victory with a new Olympic record with his final jump. In front of Hitler and the 100,000 crowd, Luz Long was the first person to congratulate Owens, cementing a friendship that was to last until Long was killed at the Battle of San Pietro in 1943. Recalling his feelings at the time, Owens later said, "You can melt down all the medals and cups I have, and they wouldn't be a plating for the 24-carat friendship I felt for Luz Long at that moment."
So there we go. Not only the Nazi Olympics, it was sort of infamous for that, of course, but was famous for it being the Jesse Owens Olympics. And there's lots of apocryphal stories that came out of this, and some things happened, some things didn't happen.
Okay.
But what certainly did happen is in a packed stadium in Berlin, where people were basically either enthusiastically doing saluting Hitler or being made to do it. Well, but there's a lot of it going on.
Yeah.
Jesse Owens was just, what an athlete. So he wins the 100 metres by a stretch. He wins the 200 metres by more and breaks a world record. Mm-hmm. They then win the 4x100 metres and break the world record. And then he's in the long... I find the long jump the most fascinating part of this because in the long jump, his main competitor was a fellow called Luz Long, who was the German long jump. That looked every inch the sort of Aryan male, tall, blonde hair, square jaw. And even sort of fraternising with the enemy, in inverted commas, in those days, you were on very thin ice in Nazi Germany. There was secret police, there were people ratting on people, there was all sorts of shit going on, and people getting moved away to camps and everything else, right? So in the long jump, and they said, so his teammate there, Archie Williams, he's passed away now, but what a character, the 400-metre runner, who at the time of this was obviously still alive, and looks like a black Kenny Rogers and sounds like a black Kenny Rogers, just a cool-looking bloke, who was Jesse Owens' teammate. Yeah. And he's saying he could do everything, but because he was so good at everything, he never practiced the long jump, so he just did it. He just could do it, which is bonkers. Yeah. They said, but he quite often got his takeoff wrong because he wouldn't pace it out properly and didn't do the same. Top long jump was do the same run up every time. Jesse Owens didn't do that, right? So in the finals there, in the Olympic finals, he does a fantastic jump. Luz Long then matches it. The crowd go wild, and Owens is going to foul out because he misses. I think he missed his mark once or twice, and one more time when he's gone. And Long says to him, and you can read around this, and somebody said it happened this way, some say it didn't happen this way, but Archie Williams is convinced that what happened there was Long comes over to Jesse Owens and says, move back a step. So, you may take a few inches off your jump, but at least you won't be disqualified, right? Yeah. And that's the jump that Jesse Owens beats Lutz and wins the gold medal. And the first person that comes over to him and puts his arm around him is Luz Long. Which at the time, you talk about that Aryan ideology and Hitler and everything else, that was fucking risky what he did there.
Yeah.
And I think, so I read a bit about Luz Long after that as well. I think if he'd been a champion, I very much doubt they would send him down to the Italian front, right? Which was one of the, it's quite often forgotten in the war, but one of the fiercest theatres of conflict in the war was down there in Italy.
That's the most interesting sentence in this whole video is the bit where it says, where and when he died. Yeah. And you're like, I thought exactly the same thing. I thought you've got to assume that there's either a grudge being held or 100%. No politeness being given to this guy. I'm
convinced if he'd have blanked Jesse Owens or if he'd won won the long jump, there's no way they would have sent him on active duty in such a dangerous theatre of war. So in 1943 he gets killed. And after
they remained
the war,
friends. They had a letter-writing relationship. And
he stayed friends with his son after the war as well.
He did.
He died.
Yeah, I read about that.
I've seen the last letter he writes to Jesse Owens, where he knows that because the fighting was so fierce where he was, he knows that effectively his number is up, and he says, please stay in contact with my son, because he will never know his father, and I want him to know the kind of man I am. And he's like, I can't believe, I'm paraphrasing, he says, we shouldn't be fighting each other, we should be allowed to be friends like we were in a sporting sense.
It's ridiculous, isn't it?
And yeah, I think that friendship, from what I understand, meant an awful lot to Jesse Owens.
Well, Jesse Owens was best man at his son's wedding.
Was it?
Superb.
Yeah.
Hell.
And you just
Superb.
go, that's...
Again,
That's
about
amazing,
sports people running the world, right? There's no way that would have happened if it wasn't a bunch of nerds and weirdos running government. Because you've been, you've seen, you know what each other have gone through. So Lutz would have known exactly what Jesse's... No, he would have known what exactly was going through, because he was a black man in, pre-war America. Must have been fucking horrific.
Yeah.
But he would have had respect for him as a fellow athlete, and an interest in his story, and vice versa, and a friendship, and a rivalry.
Yes.
If that was up to... If Jesse Owens was president and Luz Long was Chancellor of Germany, that never would have happened, right? It just would, because you understand each other, or at least you respect each other. So yeah, I find that whole Berlin Olympics, like I said before, I got the Leonard Riefenstahl video out when I was in. I had to order it. It took 6 weeks to get it on Blockbuster.
Yeah.
But God, that whole thing building up to
Do a
to
lot of
war.
checks in that 6 weeks.
But everyone knew war was coming. It was going to happen. It was a matter of time.
Yeah.
And you've got that Berlin Olympics I find fascinating. And of course, there wasn't an Olympics then until 48, to London 12 years later. But yeah, God, imagine being in that stadium.
Yeah.
And I didn't know the Lutz Long story until this clip. I knew all about Jesse Owens and the 100 and the 200 and the 400. I knew that the 4x1. I knew he was a long jumper. Didn't know this story. Found it fascinating. And I just found it heartbreaking. And there's the bit at the end, and there's the two of them. So there's like a little photo montage of the two of them at the end of the clip. Thinking,
I saw a video once, because obviously he was running on a cinder track wearing heavy shoes.
leather shoes, yeah.
I saw a video once where it was trying to account for the differences in surface and the differences in equipment. Obviously, the differences in distance, because some of them were running 100 yards as opposed to 100 metres. And when you take all that into account, they worked out that he's like the third fastest man of all time, Jesse Owens.
Really?
Yeah.
Because Bob Hayes, when they sort of factored lots of stuff in, Bob Hayes was right up there as well.
Yes, yeah.
Okay, yeah.
So you're saying in at number one, but when you consider the surfaces he was running on, you have his. I mean, it would be amazing what he'd be doing now on a modern track.
Imagine him going back to a pre-war America where he was completely a second-class citizen as well.
Well, yeah, that's...
Yeah.
Well, he because you look at it, I was looking at some Carl Lewis stuff and sort of the way that he technically defends his 100 metres title, and then we'll talk about Usain Bolt later on. And I sort of looked back and I was like, I wonder what Jesse Owens did after this. And then I hadn't thought it through, obviously, but...
Was he a janitor or something daft?
Yeah, but it was the amateur era, wasn't it? So immediately he then thinks, well, I'm going back to America where, I'm not going to earn a lot of money anyway, and there are all these races in Sweden on the way back where there will be money available. So he decides to earn money, and therefore is never going to compete at the Olympics again, even without war as being the option.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So...
Because he knows as soon as he gets paid, he's done.
Yeah, exactly. But just kind of cashing in on stuff. Yeah, it's what he did is so remarkable in history that the rest of his life isn't that remarkable compared to any other black person back in the States.
Yeah.
And that is fascinating.
He died of lung cancer. He didn't start smoking till he was 32.
Oh, God.
I
suppose he stopped running and thought,
Yeah, just thought, sod it.
Yeah.
It's weird, though, isn't it? At 32, to suddenly become a pack-a-day cigarette smoker.
I just think it's weird that we, everybody in the West, in inverted commas, upholds this as being this great sort of stance against this racist regime, and then he goes back to a country where...
Oh, my God, apartheid America.
Yeah, exactly. And you're just like, that bit is never really highlighted as part of the story.
Yes, yes.
And that's fascinating as well.
Well, I don't know. Ali throws his gold medals away. He thinks, I'm not even a fucking free man of my own country. What are we going to Vietnam for? Bloody shoot other poor people. What's the point?
Yeah, it is really interesting. So take a huge step back and look at it through all different eyes.
This is a fascinating period of time. This is a really good clip, and it's the bloke, the voice as well as the fella from Trans World Sport International. So
yeah,
you
I
can't
noticed
go
that.
wrong.
Yeah, the only disappointment for me then is that there is no sort of Geordie style voiceover for any of the German participants, which would have made it a real highlight for me.
Yeah,
a Eurotrash style voiceover was what it needed.
Yeah.